So if you want some simple steps on how to improve your insulin levels, to reduce your fatigue, your achiness, your pain, and maybe the way you wake up in the morning, then this video is for you. Hi, I'm Trevor Tacuti, CEO of SpineWise, and if you know you need some help with your insulin levels and you just want some advice, then just post up your favorite emoji or send me a message and I'll get some help to you as soon as we can. But if you really want to understand how you can take control of this yourself, then watch through the rest of the video because I'm going to give you some quick steps that you can use to really start getting into this really quickly. But before we get into that, let me give you a breakdown of how insulin works and what insulin is. So, if we take ourselves here during the day, and excuse my images, I know I'll never criticize another child for their drawing of a human being again. You get a whole new found respect for your own kids when you start trying to draw images, hey. So anyway, if this is our person here, and now we've just gone and eaten some carbohydrate, we've just eaten it, then eventually works its way through the digestive system, gets into our bloodstream, and then from our bloodstream, it eventually moves into the cells, where the cells then convert it to either fat as an energy storage source, glycogen, which is another form of energy storage in muscles this time, or directly for energy immediately to be used instantly. So this whole process of insulin really comes because we need the insulin to push that glucose or the carbohydrate inside your arteries into the cell. So insulin kind of opens the gate to allow glucose or carbohydrate to get into the cell to start that mechanism off and rolling. So without insulin, this doesn't occur. But one of the big problems we have with it is that we constantly keep increasing insulin over and over, and high levels of insulin keep being released. Then eventually these cells start shutting the gate and they don't allow insulin to have an effect on the cell anymore. And some of you might know this as insulin resistance, and if it gets bad enough, this is when we start developing conditions like metabolic syndrome or type 2 diabetes. So this is what we call insulin resistance, and it basically prevents all these things kind of happening from here. So our blood sugar levels start going up, and then we start having some broad effects right through the system. So things like weight gain, but more importantly, where we establish that weight is really critical, and this is what we call visceral fat. And this fat storage goes from between your waist, or I should say your lower ribs, down to about the hip. So this is our gut, our belly that we're talking about in this area. Cholesterol changes. So this cholesterol is another fat, and strangely enough, we don't actually just get cholesterol from our diet. Our liver actually processes cholesterol. It's been reported that changes with insulin can actually alter our cholesterol metabolism pathways and therefore alter cholesterol as well. Fatigue. So remember, insulin is all about energy. It's about carbohydrate metabolism, about fat metabolism. All this is what gives us our energy mechanism. So fatigue, especially postural fatigue, is one that we commonly see here in the office associated with that. Inflammation. So there's a whole lot of different fat metabolism pathways that relate to your omega-3s and your omega-6s that are essential for controlling and regulating inflammation, and insulin tends to alter that, and as it alters that, once again, we start getting broad, often chronic-based inflammation, which becomes degenerative and starts aging us quite quickly. And then brain-related changes as well. So the brain is one of the biggest consumers of glucose in the body. We use it for metabolism for a whole lot of different things in terms of our brain health. We also use it for things like getting serotonin into the brain as well. So we have brain-related changes, and Dr. Daniel Amen, who's one of the foremost psychiatrists around in terms of brain imagery, who's been doing brain scans now for years and years and years, assessing people, kind of coined the term that he called dinosaur syndrome, which is where people who have chronic blood sugar issues and insulin issues tend to have a smaller brain and a bigger waist. And that's just because the changes that happen as a result of all that as well. So as you can see, insulin has a profound effect on people generally, not just when we talk about blood sugars and do you crave sugar or not. So if this sounds like you and you don't want to watch any further, that's fine. Just post up your emoji or otherwise send me a message and I'll get you some help and give you some advice with what you can actually do. Okay, so when we start looking at the pattern with this, what can we actually do about all this stuff? Well, you've got two options with this. Number one, change the quantity of carbohydrate in your diet, or two, change the quality of carbohydrate in your diet. So what do I mean by this? Well, when we're talking about quality, what we're really talking about is this thing called glycemic index, which is an offshoot of which is now called glycemic load. Or when we're talking about quantity is what percentage of your calories are derived from carbohydrate every day, or more commonly nowadays used is what's the number of grams of carbohydrate in your diet. Generally speaking, when we start looking at this, which do we start with? Because this is really, really important. Because changing everything, if you make radical, significant shifts to your diet, then quite often this can actually be quite stressful and can start creating any issues. And we would never suggest anybody taking major shifts to their diet without actually seeking some guidance in doing so. But which do we actually start with? Well, personally in our office, we always start with the quality first. The quality is really, really important. The reason for that is when we're talking about quality carbohydrate, it really is about how fast it digests. So when we're talking about how fast it digests, it's really to do with the speed of which we go from this step here to this step here into your bloodstream. And this is what we call the glycemic index, or it's also been a slightly offshoot of that called glycemic load. So we look at something like broccoli. Broccoli has a high percentage of carbohydrate in it, but it's very slow digesting, so therefore it takes a fair amount of time to get into your digestive system, which means it's quite beneficial and has a very low insulin response, which we call a low glycemic index. Well, if you take something like chocolate cake, for instance, even though it also has a high percentage of carbohydrate in it, that carbohydrate is rapidly moved into the bloodstream. So it goes from mouth into artery really, really quickly. And as a result of it going through so quickly, the result from that is that we tend to get an insulin spike, and that insulin spike is over and over again, often leads to things like insulin resistance that we spoke about before. So it's all about the speed of digestion when we're talking about the quality, which is the important thing, not the quantity as such. And the other reason why we love working with quality before quantity is because if you change the quality, you're going to change the quantity anyway. So we can kind of kill two birds with one stone. And for many people who are eating relatively well, most people are finding that the quality of their carbohydrate intake is actually not too bad. So it may only need to be 2 or 3 things you need to change in your diet to actually make quite a profound effect on your insulin levels. So changing the quality is always the first place to start. And glycemic index is really what we're talking about with that. So it can still be a little bit difficult. So what we want to do is just go through a bit of a trial process, what we call withdrawal provocation tests. So you reduce your glycemic index down and do that for a week or 2, and then once you've done that for a week or 2, then just step it up to a high level, do that for a week or 2, then go up again and keep moving through with it until you find that you're no longer feeling so very good. So when you drop the glycemic index down, most people find that they feel less bloated, they have more energy, they feel less stiff, their head feels a bit clearer. These are common things that we see from or hear from people who have changed the diet in that way. Then as you go back up, look for the point where things start going a little bit astray and things just aren't feeling very well anymore. So if you want some guidance with that and you want to know how to do that in a structured manner, I've produced a document which we use in our office all the time. I'm happy to share it with you. If you're interested in that document, just send me a message and I'll get that document out to you. And then you can have a play around with it yourself and you can start looking through the quality issues and start regulating them yourself. Anyway, if you're looking for some more help or you want some more advice, just send me a message or post up your favorite emoji and I'll get you some help. Otherwise, remember, it's all about adding life to your years, not just years to your life.